Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be recreating the legendary floating mountains from the movie Avatar. The floating mountains in the movie Avatar are called the Hallelujah Mountains, and they float on a magnetic flux. I was sent this floating bonsai pot and the magnetic base that goes with it by Stilio. They're an online web store that sells bonsai supplies. This bonsai pot is not a trick. It actually levitates. You can take it away like that. The base does need to be plugged in, but it doesn't use a lot of power. The power is just used to keep the floating bonsai pot in the center. One of the things I like about bonsai is the possibilities are endless. I could plant a small tree in this pot. I could plant some flowers. I could do a lot of things. But I was thinking for this pot, I'd like to recreate the floating mountains from the movie Avatar. This floating bonsai pot looks amazing just by itself. So I was thinking, well, let's try and make it look even more amazing by building a great big mountain on top of the pot. I wanted to test and see if this concept was possible, so I mocked up some styrofoam to simulate the weight of the mountain on top of the base, and it's working quite well. I'll be creating a realistic floating mountain from the movie Avatar, and I'll use it as an accent to one of my Avatar style bonsai trees. This coming up in the Bonsai Zone. My styrofoam mock-up proved that I can get quite a large mountain on top of the base. So I came across this styrofoam head that I think is about the right size to carve into a giant detailed mountain. Alright, let's get my mountain off the stand and we'll start carving the head to fit the base. My plan is to keep the head in this position, to carve the neck to fit inside the pot. And when it's all done, the carving, I'm going to cut it in half and hollow out the inside to make it extra light. I'm going to use an X-Acto knife to carve away at the base. Styrofoam always makes a bit of a mess, but I'll have to vacuum it up when I'm all done. I've got to fit the base of the head into the hole in the pot here. So I've got quite a bit of carving to do. I've got the head fitted to the bonsai pot now. It's a rather bizarre sight, a head floating in midair like that. My next task will be taking the scalpel knife to the head to carve it to look like a rock. If you're squeamish at all, you may want to turn away. I'll take the head off the base again and start the carving. So I want to have some plateaus. This is the top of my mountain. So I'm going to carve kind of some features into it. This will be very freestylish. I'm not going to use any templates or plans or anything. I'm just going to carve what I think. I've been carving the styrofoam and I've got it rough to shape. So I'm going to put it back in the pot like that, and I'll see how it looks and then I'll make further refinements. So I'll see how it balances. There we go. So I've got that position now. Let's have a look at it from the distance. I'll give it a spin so we can see it 360 degrees. I'm looking at the rock from the distance, and I think it still looks a little heavy up top. I think I could, carve the top down so it's more of a column rather than bulbous on the top here. So I'll do that. I'll, refine the shape a bit. Here's a look at the rock now. It's looking better. It looks trimmer. It looks a little more rock-like, I think. Originally, I thought I'd have to hollow the rock out from the inside to make it light enough to float, but the weight is fine. It could be probably twice as heavy as this and still float fine. I'm having another look at the shape of the rock. I still think some of these bumps stick out a little too far. There's maybe just too many of them. Like this one looks fine here, but I don't like having two more at the base here. Another one up here. I think I've got to simplify it a bit to make it look more realistic so it's not so orderly. I finished the carving of the rock and I'm happy with it. I think it looks really natural. It's a little more simpler than I had it at first. So the next step will be to finish the styrofoam to make it look more like a rock. To finish the rock, I'll have to use a variety of techniques. Paint. I can't use anything really heavy like cement or anything on it, so it'll have to be done with lightweight materials. I won't be planting any live moss or trees on this rock, but I will be using these model miniatures. I went to the local craft store and I got miniature grass, bushes, trees, and some spray-on glue. I've been studying the rock and I like the overall shape of it, but I think I've got to do a little refinement. Right now it's all kind of rough and styrofoam looking, so I want to smooth out some of the planes to make it look more like a rock face and maybe put some cracks, some horizontal cracks in the rock to give it a little more realistic appearance when I go to paint it. I'm going to use a file and a little thin saw blade to work on the rock. So I'm just going to make some of these surfaces a little more square just by filing the styrofoam, and it puts almost a smooth finish on it. Next I'm going to come in with my thin saw blade and just make some cracks in it. So I'll just carve some little cracks in the rocks, and hopefully when they get filled in with paint you'll see them and they'll be a little more noticeable, and it'll just give another level of detailing to the rocks. So I'm just cutting into the styrofoam like that. I don't know how noticeable they will be in the final product, but we'll see. I was thinking it would be nice to have a wire coming out of the rock to look like a vine and attach some pieces of styrofoam to look like some floating rocks around the main rock. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to start painting the rock with the darkest colors first. So I'm going to paint it matte black to get the black in all the cracks and crevices, and then I'll start painting on the lighter coats. Okay, so here I go with the black paint. And I think this enamel paint will attack the styrofoam slightly until it dries. So you do lose a little bit of surface detail. It'll soften it up slightly, but not too much. If you're worried about losing surface detail, you can use acrylic paint. That won't attack the styrofoam. But I'm not too worried. I think, if anything, it looks a little rough right now, so by painting this enamel paint on it, it may just smooth it out a little more. I have no idea how this project's going to turn out. However, I have to say I'm really enjoying making it. So even if it doesn't look the greatest in the end, I will have had a lot of fun making this. Got a really nice sunny day outside today, so I'll put this outside to dry, and it should dry quite quickly. And hopefully I can get quite a few more coats on today. The first coat of black paint is dry now, and it did attack the styrofoam just a little bit. You can see in some of these sections where I put the paint on quite thick, it ate away and into the foam. So I'll have to touch that up with some more black paint. Here's a cavity here that it kind of ate inside there. It really exaggerated some of these saw cuts, made them a little bigger and more noticeable, so I kind of like that effect. It turned out pretty good. I finished touching up all the black paint, so now it's ready to put on the base color for the rock. I'm going to make my base color for the rock sort of a greenish, bluish gray color. So something so it doesn't look just black and white. I want to give it a bit of a hue. So I think I'll lean towards the greenish side. My plan will be to have the underside of the rocks the bluish gray and the top side of the rocks more of a greenish gray. So it looks like, you know, moss and lichen and vegetation has grown on the surfaces where the sun could hit them, and the underside has the base kind of bluish rock. In my palette, I'm gonna put some gray. Okay, in the other corner I'll add some green, and the last color to go in the palette is some royal blue. So I'll start with my brush in the gray, and I'm just gonna dab a bit of blue on. So each time I paint, I'm gonna dab a bit of blue in the gray, so the paint scheme will be quite random on the styrofoam. So I'm gonna run my paintbrush out on the paper here to get it just kind of dry, and then I can drag it over my rock. Okay, so the bluish color was going to go on the undersides of the rock, so I'm going to paint that in the upwards direction. Like this. Just dry brushing it on. And it's always best to add light coats and see how it looks. And you can always add more. I'm going to start applying the green from the top side now. Okay, and I'll start brushing this from the top. So I can already see it's starting to, you know, give that look I was after, where it's green on the upper surface and more of a bluey color on the bottom surface. Okay, I think that'll do for the green highlights. And now, it's looking quite black, the overall color of it, quite dark. So I'm going to go now and do, you know, in a circular motion with a base color of maybe a slightly reddish gray color to look sort of like a natural rock color. So I'll add a bit of red oxide to my palette so I can mix that in and kind of get a nice stone color. So here I go. I'm thinking maybe that black color for the cracks and crevices is maybe a little strong. I may have to run a wash over it to dilute that black. Just maybe is too dark. While the paint that I just put on is still sort of wet, I'm going to add a wash of thinner. I don't like the fact that all these recesses are dead black and then you have the contrast of the top coat. It's just too much. So I'm gonna dilute it just by painting thinner on. And I think this will help wash some of the color into the cracks and make it less artificial looking. Here's the rock now with its color coat on, and I'm happy with it. I think it looks quite realistic. So I'll put it outside to dry, and then we'll continue work on it. The rock's all painted up, and now will be the exciting part, applying all the foliage, the grass, and the trees. I'll start with the grass, then I'll add the bushes, and then finally the trees. The theory behind this grass is I'm going to spray the upper surfaces of the rocks with this spray-on glue, and then I'm going to sprinkle the grass on the top. That's the plan. Let's see if it works. So here goes the application of the glue. I'm going to spray it from the top of the rock. And then I'll get the grass and I'll try sprinkling it vertically. So far it's working. And you're going to get a lot of excess grass, but you just have to shake it away. It does recommend that you spray some more glue on to kind of set the grass in place. So I'll do that. So there's how it's looking. I'm not trying to simulate grass with this, but I'm trying to simulate moss that would grow on the rocks in a tropical setting. I think we're getting pretty close here to being done with this stuff. I was going to place the little bushes next, but I was thinking maybe I should get the trees in place first and then arrange the bushes around the trees. I think the trees will be more important to get the positioning correct, and then I can fill in all the kind of gaps and empty spaces with bushes. So next job will be putting the trees on. I'll get the trees opened up. The problem is that all the trees are almost exactly the same, so I may have to do some pruning on them so I get them to look, you know, a little different from each other. So there's the trees. Not so keen on this plastic stand that comes with them. Kind of makes it look like a Christmas tree, but I may have to change that. I'm going to see if it comes off of the stand. Yeah. And it's made of wire, the trunk. So I think I can probably just put some krazy glue on and stick them in place. Here's a close-up of the little tree. You can see, I think it's just made of little pieces of foam glued on. There's that base that I'm gonna not use. Arranging these trees on top of the rock will be kind of like doing a forest planting. I'll have to arrange them so they look good. So I'm gonna start with one tree and I'll put it right here. And that'll be my first tree, and I'll start arranging the others around it. All right, I'm positioning tree number 2 now. I'll put it back here. That looks good. And here's tree number 3. I'm going to put it way back here. Tree number 4 is going to go in this outcrop here. Right there. I think I'll put one here also. Okay, here goes tree number 5. There. And definitely have to put some over here. So, get out the krazy glue. And I'm going to put one in here. I'll probably put 2 in that area. It's quite large. So we'll put one kind of in close here. Like that. And I only have one tree left. Boy, I use my trees up quite quickly. I think I want one more up top, so I'm gonna put one more on the top, and I'll have to fill in the other areas with bushes. They'll look quite good too. There's one right here. And that's it. That's all the trees I have. My next task is to apply the little bushes all over it. They can look like trees too. They'll just look like smaller trees. Yeah, I'll put them all over the rocks. It should look pretty good. I've got lots of them in here. They just come in little clumps and you glue them on. So here I go with my first bush. Stick it right there. Yeah, it looks good. I like the color of them. Second one's going to go right here. I'm just placing them wherever I think something would grow. Yeah, they're looking good, I think. Just adds another level of detail to it. And down here. I do want to place some on this column too. I don't want it to look just like rocks and moss. So I'll get some attached there. That. Most of the vegetation will be up top here, so it'll be very green up top. Did I ever mention how fun this is? I think I did. It's really fun doing this. I've got the moss, the bushes, and the trees mounted to the Avatar floating mountain. And I'm just testing some outriggers now. I've got some aluminum wire that goes into the styrofoam and bends down to look like a vine hanging. And I'm just testing how much weight I need to put on this side to make it all balanced, so it's not tilting off center. So you can see I need a little more weight to get the main rock vertical like that. My next step will be to glue up some smaller rocks that I can have hanging from these vines. I'll just give it a spin so you can see all the top work. You can see it's still hovering high off the base, even though I have all this weight up top. When I get the rock more balanced, it'll spin 360 degrees and just keep going. It won't rock back and forth like it is now. That's just because it's off balance. I've added the rocks that are hanging by the vines, and I've got it pretty well balanced so it spins nicely. Just slightly off, but it's pretty close. I've glued the floating mountain into the stone base, and that's so it doesn't shift around and upset my balance point. I'm going to go in now and paint the aluminum wire a green color like vines, paint my base and my small floating rocks. So here I go. Just like that, just painted a nice green color. I'll be adding more threads and stuff to look like smaller vines. This is just the basic kind of structure at the moment. I've got the vines and the small rocks painted up, so I'll let that dry. That coat is dry, so I'm going to use my spray glue and my grass or moss and apply it to my floating rocks and the base. I'll start with the base. Spray some glue on. And then I'll sprinkle the moss or grass on it. I could have added more chunks of styrofoam to the base to kind of get it to blend in a little more maybe, but we'll see. Maybe I will add some. I'll just spray it to hold it all in place. There we go. Next I'll give my small rocks a spray. And get some moss on those. Looks good. I want to get a bit more around this back side here. So we'll get some on there. It's really nice, this stuff. It collects on the horizontal surfaces and makes it look very realistic. I'll get some around the back side here. And finally the smallest rock at the back here. And there we go, we've got the moss on the rocks now. I'm going to add some finishing touches now. I'm going to put some little bushes on top of these small rocks. So here I go. It's in there nicely. Some down there. I don't think I'll need very many bushes on this. That looks enough for that rock right there. There's a view of the bushes on that rock. There's my lowest rock. And there's a view of the smallest rock. I'm doing a floating test now. I had to move some of the rocks lower down. They were a little high on the structure and it was a little unstable. So now it's fairly stable on it. There's a shot of the top of it rotating. So it's kind of settled down into a nice orbit, nice and stable. There's a shot of it spinning, and you can see it's really settled down and looks quite realistic. With the white background, you can see it's floating quite high off the base still. I really enjoyed making my floating Hallelujah mountain from the movie Avatar. If you're interested in creating your own floating bonsai or your Avatar floating mountain, I'll put the link in the description below and you can get 10% off your purchase. I want to thank Stilio for sending me my floating bonsai pot. I really had fun creating this Avatar floating mountain. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me here today in the Bonsai Zone.